Hey everyone, and welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and this week it is a new month, which means it is a new edition of our Weird Fun Bag series. This is number 4, and there are, as you know, 3 stories. They're not really related, but they fit the ethos of this show. Just random weird stuff that's happened from history that just didn't really fit in any other kind of episode, but they weren't exactly like big enough stories either to stand on their own in their own episode. So they're just getting thrown into this pile, and I'm pulling some out to share with you every now and then, or every month at least. So let's get into it. Our 3 stories this week. We're looking at the McMartin Preschool trial, the Meth guerilla, and a frozen dead guy named Trygve Baj. Story time. So our first story here, it takes place in the 1980s when there was this weird sort of social panic going on. It was the Satanic Panic, where there was this sort of surge in, conservative moral values, and like this thought that there were so many things that were satanic and were kind of, bringing out demons, and were, I don't know, it's a real insane time to be alive when you look back on it. I mean, and obviously I wasn't alive in the 80s. I was born in 89, so I didn't live through this, but I still got a taste of it. When Pokemon came out, I was in a Montessori school. They were fine with it. It was, it exploded on the scene then. But then the next year I moved over to a very, very, very conservative fundamental Christian school. And they ended up banning Pokemon, and it was not allowed on campus. Students were not allowed to play the games or watch the TV show or do the trading cards or anything like that. Because they didn't like that Pokemon evolved, and they thought it was teaching evolution, which we don't have to get into a scientific debate on that. But they also just kind of thought that it was satanic in a way, and I don't know how, but it was one of those things where it was like, this flow chart of understanding, where it's like, do I understand this? Yes. Okay. God must have ordained it and allowed it to come into my life, and I must embrace it. Or no, I do not understand it, so it must be satanic and an instrument of the devil, and I must avoid it at all costs. And so it's a weird way to go about living your life, if I'm being honest. I really think it's a lot easier. Your life becomes a little bit more enriched if you take a little bit more of a curious mindset, maybe not jump to conclusions right at the start. And, maybe, ask some questions, do some learning, and then come to a final conclusion. And if your final conclusion is that it's still satanic, fine, be that way. But, in the 80s, there were just a lot of things going on. You have Dungeons and Dragons that's popping up, and everybody thinks that's satanic. Anything remotely fantasy related is obviously part of the occult and is conjuring demons and all that kind of good stuff. And it was so strange. And so this story here of the McMartin Preschool trial was born out of that. Like it happened during this sort of satanic panic. McMartin's Preschool was run by a woman named Virginia McMartin. It was located in Manhattan Beach, California, which is a suburb of Los Angeles. And it was just like any other preschool across the country. But then in 1983, children at this preschool started telling their parents about all kinds of like crazy things that were happening at this school. And so Judy Johnson, a mother of one of these kids, filed a police report claiming that her child had been sodomized by her estranged husband and Ray Buckey, who was a teacher at the preschool and the grandson of Virginia McMartin. Judy Johnson also went on to claim that other students had experienced sexual encounters with animals, that a school administrator had stabbed another child with a drill, and that Ray Buckey, who I guess when he wasn't sodomizing this woman's child, was just flying around in the air. And I don't know at what point you maybe ask yourself, how about I just go to the school and just kind of put my mind at ease, because this is very ridiculous. But no, Judy did not do this. Instead, she went to the police about it. Police also were like, yes, this makes 100% complete sense. There's no way this isn't real. So they sent letters to roughly 200 parents who had children at this preschool, requesting that they also ask their children if they had had any sort of similar experiences. And you can see immediately the logic in that, because there was no warning in that letter to say, hey, maybe take some of their answers with a grain of salt, because they're very small children and they have very active imaginations, and they don't understand that there's a time to play pretend and also a time to be very serious and tell the truth. So not long after Judy files this police report, she is actually hospitalized with acute paranoid schizophrenia and chronic alcoholism. This woman even died 3 years later because of it. And under normal circumstances, again, I think this would raise some red flags to investigators that her initial police report and all of these wild claims allegedly coming from her child were probably complete crap. You know, it was probably her own paranoid delusions that started this in the first place. But because there were other instances of alleged satanic activity going on all around the country, the investigators didn't stop. They proceeded to literally manipulate 360 children into making confessions that they had been sexually abused by Ray Buckey and other people in McMartin's preschool. And so how they did it was that classic sort of TV trope. They got the doll out and they started asking children where on the doll the bad man had touched them. Key McFarland, who was a social worker for the Children's Institute International in Los Angeles, was running this. They, did all of, if not most of, if not all of these interrogations. And this person got coerced all sorts of stories from these kids who, by this point, had clearly banded together to come up with the most insane stories about Ray Buckey and the McMartin Preschool that their tiny little brains and imaginations could have come up with. And it's not hard to do, right? Like, I've done this before. I was, I think, in first grade, so a little bit older than preschool age, but I somehow convinced all of the kids in my combined first through third grade class to rally together and almost riot around this one kid. Here's the thing. Applebee's was the place to be in Goldsboro in the mid-90s. It was a hopping place, good food, still has good food. Highly, I appreciate it. Some people might judge me for that statement, and those people are just elitist and don't really have a good opinion about things. But we would go out to the Applebee's, right? And, we would order wings, obviously, and we would take home some sauce, some wing sauce in a little cup. And then because I grew up very tragically white trash, the next morning for school, my mom would make my bologna sandwich and also spread some of that buffalo sauce on my bologna sandwich, which sounds disgusting in hindsight. It wasn't bad. But then I'd also have, she'd leave the rest in that cup and I would dip my Doritos in it. And so we're eating lunch one day, and Jeffrey, who's my best friend at the time, he's, cool kid, but he's clumsy. He knocks my buffalo sauce off the table, and it splatters all over the floor. I'm devastated. Other kids around are devastated for me, which is odd. And then 20, 30 minutes later, after we're done eating, we're all out at recess. And through various conversations with other kids, just telling them how sad and hurt I was and how angry I am at Jeffrey because he's a clumsy little turd who doesn't care about me and my buffalo sauce from Applebee's. And I don't even know what I was doing, but I go out there and they have all circled around Jeffrey, who is up against the fence in the fetal position, crying. And these kids are chanting. And they're just kind of circling around him like they're about to just murder him, all because he spilled some of my buffalo sauce. It was amazing. I'm very persuasive like that. But it does go to show you, like, little kids can band together. Like, they are capable of some very high level thought and organization to accomplish something. It's not anything meaningful in the end, but they can still do it. And so back to this, I was a long tangent and I'm sorry, but resetting here. In addition to claims of sexual abuse at the McMartin Preschool, children told Key McFarlane that they claimed to see witches flying around the room. They claimed that some of them were taken through underground tunnels to a torture room. Others claimed to have flown in a hot air balloon to some undisclosed location where they were tortured some more. And look, here's the thing. Never mind that absolutely no one had ever seen a hot air balloon on the campus of the preschool or even flying remotely near it. Never mind the fact that a thorough check of the building, police literally checked every nook and cranny of this building. There were no secret underground tunnels. And yet, the investigation still went on. They treated these claims as 100% fact. And I have no idea why. But here's the thing, it gets better. These children also went on to claim that they had been taken to orgies at nearby car washes and airports. Some claim to have seen children flush down the toilet, which then led to a secret room where they would be abused and cleaned up before being returned to their parents. And then finally, Danny Davis, who was a lawyer representing the McMartins, when he presented a series of pictures to a child and asked him to identify his abuser, the kid pointed to a picture of Chuck Norris rather than Ray Bucky. So clearly, these kids have no idea what they're saying. These investigators and interrogators are forcing these wild confessions out of them. All right, they have no idea what they're talking about. They're just like saying, hey, use your imagination. What did you see? Yeah, I got flushed down the toilet and then I got cleaned up and then I went back to my mom. And then another time I flew in the hot air balloon and then I went to a place and they touched my ding dong and then I seed witches. They flied around the room, and then okay, yeah, that's great. So who are you saying, was behind, who abused you? It was Mr. Bucky. He did the boozing, and I think I seed him drowning the babies in the water. Okay, cool. Here's a pictures of people. All right. Can you point to me who the bad man was? Okay, you're pointing to Chuck Norris, who has just now introduced himself into this story. That's great. Say, like, it's just completely, like, it's all over the place. And still, despite all of this, the investigation, this whole thing still went to trial. And here's what's crazy. On March 22nd, 1984, Virginia McMartin, Ray Buckey, and 5 others were charged with 115 counts of child abuse, which was then expanded to 321 counts of child abuse. And for the next 20 months, lawyers from both sides argued their case. And to make things even better, Michelle Smith and Lawrence Padzer, who were co-authors of the book Michelle Remembers, in which Michelle Smith recounted her childhood experience of being involved in satanic rituals, they came to the trial and spoke to the children and the parents. And like, this book was not only proven to be completely fictional later on, but it also was a big contributor to the overall satanic panic in the 1980s. And then once this trial went public, over 100 other preschools around the country also suddenly became satanic ritual centers, although most of them did not receive the same media attention as the McMartin case. And here's what's absolutely insane to me about this trial. Went on for 7 years and cost $15 million, which at the time was the most expensive criminal case in the history of the United States. In the end, thankfully, no one was convicted. They finally realized it took them 7 years to do so, but they finally realized that all of this was completely insane and that preschools are not satanic, which sounds like just the most absurd statement you can make, but it just goes to show how collectively stupid we all can be sometimes, right? All right. These next 2 stories probably aren't as infuriating. They're fun. We go back a little bit to June 1986. All right. Namibia is at war with South Africa for their independence. And if you know anything about Africa, this is just like what's always going on there. So 2 Namibian gorillas, not like literal monkeys, but like gorilla fighters, right? I felt like I needed to explain that. They were on a mission in southern Angola, but they were not alone, because they realized that the South Africans were tracking them. They were about to get captured. And so the 2 men split up. One man ran north, deeper into Angola, and escaped. The other man ran south, deeper into the Namibian jungle. South African special forces chased this man in armored trucks. And yet, despite that, somehow this dude actually gained distance between him and the South Africans, despite the fact that these armored trucks were equipped to handle any kind of terrain, right? And they can probably, they're probably, it's the 1980s. They're probably up there, 45, 50 miles an hour. And this guy is gaining ground between himself and these trucks. The South Africans, because they're losing him, they call in helicopters to chase after this gorilla, this soldier, but even the helicopters were not able to keep up with this guy. And despite not being able to visibly keep track of him, trackers were able to follow his trail, not by coming across makeshift campsites or, makeshift latrines where he's been pooping and all that, but they kept finding used syringes with remnants of methamphetamine on the needles. They sometimes found places where this guy had collapsed from exhaustion, only to fire himself back up with another round of meth to just keep running. Meth, amazing drug. Can't use it. It's highly addictive and it will destroy your life, but this is insane what it can do for you. The South Africans kept chasing this guy for the next 5 days, but never ended up finding him. The meth gorilla, as he came to be known, his trail ended at a point along the Chandelier Road, 230 miles from where he had started running. All right. 230 miles over 5 days. That's nearly 50 miles a day of running on meth. And like, I get it, dude. Like, Africans can run for days, but like, that's really more of like, the cat is going nuts right now. I don't know what's going on. It's funny. Hey, don't scratch the carpet, please. Hey, what are you doing? Cat's on meth right now. What are you sniffing? What are you doing? You're being weird. Go, buddy, go. He's got the poop zoomies. It's It's very odd behavior. Anyway, I've derailed the show enough today. So yeah, 230 miles away, just running for his life, literally, while just completely gacked out on meth. And he got away. So good for him. Our last story here starts in 1989 when Norwegian citizen Trygve Bauge loaded the corpse of his recently deceased grandfather, Bredo Morstøl, onto a bed of dry ice and brought him to the United States. And I apologize. I said up front that the dead guy was Trygve. The dead guy was his grandfather, Bredo. But while Trygve made other arrangements, he had his grandfather stored in liquid nitrogen at the TransTime Cryonics Lab in San Leandro, California. And then for the next 3 years, Trygve and his grandmother, Aud, tried to build their own cryonics lab in Nederland, Colorado. So they're living in Norway. His grandfather dies. They immigrate to the United States. They store his grandfather in a cryogenics lab. And then while he's in there, Trygve and his grandmother decide to build their own cryogenic lab. It's so strange. So unfortunately, Trygve ended up getting deported for overstaying his visa. And then while he's trying to figure all that out, his grandmother, Aud, moves Bredo to a shack behind their house, which was still under construction. And I don't know what she thought, like if he was going to be able to stay frozen in there or what. But even worse, Aud was eventually evicted from her home because it still did not have electricity or running water, which then violated local ordinances. I guess because she was like putting all of their utility power towards keeping Bredo completely frozen. She went to the media claiming that her eviction would cause Bredo to thaw out and thus she would lose him forever, which she's already lost him. This is just a very odd and sad grieving process. But she's trying to appeal to the media's attention, or to, appeal to the media for help. And on February 7th, 1995, Aud was actually convicted of violating his own ordinance and was ordered to remove Bredo's body within 30 days or face jail time. And this actually outraged the public, mainly because there wasn't much else to get excited about in Nederland, Colorado. The Nederland Council, based on public pressure and backlash, actually made revisions to their code outlawing the possession of any body part, whole or part or whole, human or animal, that was not alive on the property, which is crazy, right? Like, because that, to me, that means you can't even like mount a deer or something like on your wall. But so the city council, they're not backing down on this. But because of the public outcry, they ended up making an exception for Bredo and basically literally grandfathering him into the new ordinance. So it's just like, from this day forward, you can't do any of this. Bredo is fine. You can stay. After the ruling, Trygve, he's still working on this. He hires a local environmental company to keep their makeshift cryonics lab running. A local shed provider and a Denver radio station raised money to build a new shed for Aud to keep Bredo's body in. But then after Aud died in 2012, several local residents came forward and offered to become the caretaker for Bredo's body, which is odd because like Aud's dead and no one cares about her anymore. Like, why wouldn't they freeze her too? And then people just take care of both of them, even though it's just a completely fruitless endeavor, but whatever. What's crazy then, this is where it just gets even stranger. Starting in 2002, the town of Nederland, Colorado began hosting Frozen Dead Guy Days, an annual celebration that consists of coffin races, a hearse parade, and a frozen dead guy lookalike contest. Visitors who come to the festival, they are given tours of the shed where, as far as I know, Bredo's body is still in there, frozen and waiting to be resuscitated. And then everyone is invited to a big dance at the end of the night called Grandpa's Blue Ball. I am not making any of that up. That is a real thing that you can do in Colorado. All right, there you go. The 4th edition of our Weird Fun Bag is in the books. Again, literally because they are in books that I have written. And I think maybe that's how I'm going to end start the segment after story time. It's in the books because it is. You can go and find my books on Amazon, although I'd prefer if you want to order one, buy one directly through the publisher, Lulu. I get more royalties that way. It's really selfish, but whatever. You pay the same price. So, I guess you pay for shipping from the publisher, but who cares? Anyway, yeah. So again, I love this series. Just such strange things happening all around the country. So let's recap and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number 1, the state of California spent over $15 million in 7 years trying to make sure of the thing that we all knew from the beginning, and that is that preschools are not satanic ritual points or meeting places or anything like that. Number 2, in 1986, a methed out Namibian soldier ran 230 miles over the course of 5 days to get away from South African troops who were trying to track him down and kill him. And then number 3, in the town of Nederland, Colorado, they celebrate the frozen body of Bredo Morstøl, who is still cryogenically frozen at the behest of his wife and grandson Trygve. Apparently the wife, I don't think her body did get frozen. They just didn't care about her. And I still don't know why. Next week on Our Weird World, we are wrapping up year 3, the final episode of the season, with 3 stories about liquids. I know, right? I'm so talented. I'm so smart, but so creative that I can put together an entire episode of historical events surrounding liquids. It's I don't know. I know you're really impressed right now. Please don't worry about sending in your fan mail extolling my greatness. It's fine. We're going to look at the stories of the Portland rum riot, the Liberty's whiskey fire, and the Boston molasses incident. And then we will dive into year number 4. Got a lot of good stuff planned for the year, for another 52 episodes. We're going to hit episode 200 in season 4. So get ready for that. It's going to be a wild ride. I can't wait for it. So we'll dive into some other things to expect as well. And yeah, thank you again so much for continuing to listen. Keep telling all of your friends and keep it weird. After bawling, I go clubbing. Then I'm hugging. Then I'm hungry and I'm walking on the street. And I'm getting grumpy. I see chow by my right. I smell food in the air. It's Chinese food, my favorite. So I'm getting hungry. Read the menu. They got broccoli, even chicken wings. Make it spicy and you like it 'cause it's beautiful and it tastes so good. I like their egg rolls and their wonton soup. This makes me feel so good. Fortune cookies tell my future. Chinese food. Yo, I like Chinese food and some wonton soup. Get me broccoli while I play Monopoly. Don't be a busy bee, 'cause it's your fantasy to eat Chinese food. Egg roll and chop suey. I use the chopsticks to eat the pot sticks. Put some hot sauce and sweet and sour. Make it sweet. because Chinese food takes away my stress. Now I'm going to go eat Panda Express. I love Chinese food. You know that it's true. I love fried rice. I love noodles. I love chow mein. Chow mo 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 mein. I love Chinese food. You know that it's true. I love fried rice. I love noodles. I love chow mein. Chow mo 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 mein.